sois osis. Tagil goimer, the meaning of that is the difference between the two things of rejoicing, happiness, and which is used, the word for happiness over here is used, the word is sasen, versus the term that's used, gila. It's brought down that there's multiple words in Lashon Kodesh for happiness, but each word has a different connotation. So there's, in our pasuk, there's two. There's sasen, which the Alter Rebbe is equating with simcha, and there's tagil, which is gila. What's the difference between them? Ki simcha in yanai, it's supposed to say with a nun, it's supposed to be there. Simcha, the idea behind it is bihi golis niglis asimcha and bachutz. When the joy is revealed outward, v'gila, what does gila mean? When the joy is internally concealed and doesn't come out to be revealed. This haftarah of Sois Osis Ba'avaya we always read before Rosh Hashanah. Skip the brackets 5 lines down, or actually to the 6th line, the line that begins Umizem Muvan. So from the fact that we read this haftarah before Rosh Hashanah, Umizem Muvan, from this it's understood the Inyan Asasin Sois Osis Va'gila Togil Yesh Lo Shaychus Lo Rosh Hashanah, that both the idea of Sasin, which is in the beginning of the pasuk Sois Osis, and the idea of Gila, which is in the word Togil, both have a connection to Rosh Hashanah. That's why we read about it right before Rosh Hashanah. That's what he explains over there in Kutei Torah. The Sois Osis that the Sois Osis is going on the revealed joy. It's referring to Sukkot, the time of our Simcha. Because Tishrei and Rosh Hashanah is beginning the whole process that's going to lead us to Zman Simchaseinu. Ubefrat al pi mashkasav b'yalkut shechag Sukkos namar gimel pam ma simcha b'kasav. When it comes to the different regalim, to the shalosh regalim, there's a difference in the number of times that simcha is mentioned. Sukkot, the most times is simcha mentioned in connection with Sukkot. It's mentioned 3 times concerning Sukkot simcha. So we see that Sukkot is totally idea of simcha. That's why we say Sois Osis in the haftarah before Rosh Hashanah, indicating the open joy of Zman Simchaseinu of Sukkot. The Togil, we also say in the beginning of the haftarah the word Togil, which indicates Asimcha Behelam, the joy is concealed. He bechinas Rosh Hashanah, that's the level of Rosh Hashanah where the joy is concealed. Sha'az bizgalus niris v'niglis bechinas ra'ada. On Rosh Hashanah, what is revealed, what's visible, what's seen, that's the level of trembling. Like it says, V'gilu birada. You should rejoice in trembling. So externally there's trembling, and internally there's the gilu, the happiness. It's only inwardly he is inlaid with joy. Like it says, that Ezra addressed the Yidden on Rosh Hashanah and told them to go back home and be happy, even though they were scared about Rosh Hashanah and so on. Because the joy of Hashem, that is your strength. So therefore we find that even Rosh Hashanah has to do with the idea of joy, except that it's inside and wrapped up by the trembling. V'gam inyan asimcha the sukkis nimtza behelm b'Rosh Hashanah. It's not just any joy is concealed in Rosh Hashanah, but specifically the joy that's going to come out later on Sukkot was there already potentially concealed in Rosh Hashanah. Like it says, like it says, in the concealment for the day of our Chag. Chag is usually, without identifying which Chag it goes on Sukkot, is called Chag. So it means that in Rosh Hashanah, it's concealed the day of our Chag, it's concealed the joy of Sukkot. The day of concealment is Rosh Hashanah. Why is Rosh Hashanah called the day of concealment? What Yom Tov is the Chodesh, meaning the moon, the new moon concealed in it. It's Rosh Hashanah because Rosh Hashanah is at the beginning, the first day of the Jewish month. The moon is barely visible. Whereas all other Yom Tovim that are in the Torah, they take place either on the 15th of the month, or the 6th of the month, or the 10th of the month. This is all when the moon is already visible. So not only is Rosh Hashanah called Keseh, concealed, because the moon is concealed, but also Chagenu, the Yom Tov of Sukkot, is concealed in it. And this day of Rosh Hashanah is found concealed and covered the matters of our day of our Chag, our day of celebration, the Yom Tov of Sukkot. Therefore, we understand why Sois, Asis, V'Sogel are both said before Rosh Hashanah. It's not only V'Sogel is said in the Haftarah before Rosh Hashanah, but also Sois, Asis, which indicates Sukkot is said before Rosh Hashanah, because even Sukkot is concealed inside of Rosh Hashanah as well. Therefore, it's appropriate in the Haftarah before Rosh Hashanah to say both. Now it goes on to explain, with explanation of this matter, second paragraph on the page. Before it says, B'kesel Yom Chagenu. So in the beginning of the pasuk it says, Tiku b'chodesh shofar. Blow in the month the shofar. Upashtik dekra einem muvan l'chura shamar b'chodesh v'lei pirish be'ed l'chodesh. And the simple meaning of the pasuk is not understood seemingly. That he says, blow in the month shofar. He doesn't explain which month. Everything else, when it comes to any Yom Tov, it will tell you a date, except for Sukkot and even except for Shavuos, but that's also based on the date of Pesach. That's the 15th of the month of the 15th of the first month is the Yom Tov of Pesach. The 14th of that month, you bring the Korban Pesach. The 10th of the 7th month is the Yom Kippur. Here all of a sudden it says, blow in the month shofar. What month? Which month are you supposed to blow shofar? And even if you tell me B'keseh, that it's the first day of the month, but which month? Doesn't tell you which month. And also what it says, shofar, b'shofar mebarle. It should have said you should blow in the shofar. What's it mean you should blow the shofar in Lashon Kodesh? That's the way you're supposed to say. When you're blowing, you're using the shofar as an instrument, so you should, the way how it's supposed to be written is with the bass, the bes shofar. So the question is, why does it say shofar without a bass? But the idea behind this is chodesh is chadshus. Chodesh is from the expression newness, renewal. That you shall blow in the month. You should blow, but it means something more. Newness, you should blow into the shofar. Pirish b'chidush shal shofar. We need to make the shofar new. Shofar mischadesh b'chol shana, that the shofar is renewed every year. V'shofar shal shana zu einoi hashofar shal shana makoidmis. The shofar of this year is not the same shofar that we had last year and the year before that, and so on. Okay, Pirish Baal Shem Tov Zal b'keser Shem Tov, like the explanation of the Baal Shem Tov in his sefer called Keser Shem Tov. The Tiku b'chodesh shofar. What is the meaning of that pasuk? Ratza loymar lechadesh shelo yeh k'moichai kavua. You should renew it. You should look at the shofar as something entirely new, not like a law, not like something that's already an established rule that you're doing just, well, this is just one of the things we do every Rosh Hashanah. It has to be a totally new experience of blowing shofar. How come? Why does it have to be a totally new experience? Because what shofar needs to accomplish is to draw down a totally new revelation from above, a totally new vitality from above. Because as Chassidus always explains, the vitality and energy of the entire previous year leaves, and now we need to draw down a new energy. So to be able to draw down a new energy, we have to approach the shofar and Rosh Hashanah in a way of newness, which he connects with the idea of delight and enjoyment. Something that we're just repeating again and again, that's not an enjoyable thing. Something that's new has delight to it. So we need to do it in a way of enjoyment and delight, as we can explain. First, top of the page, last two words on the line. The idea behind this is all matters return to their previous state as they were before the world was created, before the prior Rosh Hashanah, and so on. And we need to draw down from that initial place, that original source, a new light that never in the last 5,785 years, it never came down into this world. Skip the parentheses. How does this drawn down? That's through the power of delight and pleasure. In a person, what's the highest soul power? We have our thought, speech, and deed. We have our emotions. We have our intellect. We have our will. What's on top of all of that, and what motivates and pushes all of the rest? That's our power of tainug, our delight. Since it is the way down, so too by a human being, so correspondingly, a person reflects the way things are above. So, mezem moving gam l'maylo, from this is also understood above. The bechinas hatainu, the bechina achiel yoyne shalamaylo, that the level of Hashem's delight kiviyachol is the highest level of above. Since on Rosh Hashanah all matters return to their beginning, to their initial state, to their highest, most source and root. We need to draw it down from that initial source and root. Moving, it's understood that the drawing down needs to be from the delight of above. That's how far up we need to reach. Not Hashem's Chachma, not Hashem's Malchus, but we have to go all the way to the level of delight, the most highest level. Because we need to draw down from above, so we know there's midah keneged midah, measure for measure. We need to do something corresponding to that down here below. Therefore, also in a person's service to Hashem, there also has to be the idea of delight. Like it's explained in the Siddur that has Chassidus on it, that the Mittler Rebbe collected from the Alter Rebbe's Mamarim, skip the parentheses, to be able to draw down this great delight from above. It's insufficient just the avoida with our power of action or our power of speech, which is the normal avoida throughout the year. We use our action, our speech, and our thought in Torah mitzvahs, and that's sufficient for the chayis throughout the year to become revealed. It's not even enough the power of thought, or the level of our emotions, or even the level of our intellect, or even to serve Hashem with our will. There needs to be the service in the inner part of the soul, the power of the light. Through that we draw down a new light from the innermost level and the delight of above. That's what it means that you should blow and make newness into the shofar. Like we said from the Baal Shem Tov, it should be a new experience. Tiku inyan kabal soil. The word tiku, in addition to blowing, can indicate also accepting the yoke of heaven, making Hashem my boss. I take him on as my king. Tekeya could also mean like setting a stake in the ground. So he inserts himself and he embeds himself with a powerful strength to accept upon himself the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. The general idea of the service on Rosh Hashanah is accepting the yoke of heaven. Like it's explained in many places, the difference between how we accept Hashem as king On Rosh Hashanah, how we accept the yoke of Hashem the entire year. Though throughout the entire year, there has to be the acceptance of the yoke of heaven, and that's why we recite Shema before reciting V'hoyim Shemaya. V'hoyim Shemaya talks about the mitzvahs, but before that we have to say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, that we're accepting Hashem as our King. Still in all the reishis avodah v'ikra v'sharsha hu in the kabbalah selmat shemayim, like we said at the beginning of Perek Mem Aleph, the beginning of our service and its core and its root is accepting the yoke of heaven. Chazal say, like I just now said about Kriya Shema, sheikabel elmat shemayim tchila. First, a person has to read the pasuk of Shema to accept upon himself the yoke of the kingdom of heaven initially. And then in Vayim Shemai he accepts upon himself the yoke of mitzvahs. Still in all, it's distinct and different from the acceptance of the yoke of Rosh Hashanah. The acceptance of the yoke of heaven throughout the year is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. So that you should do the mitzvahs, and to do the mitzvahs appropriately, and do mitzvahs correctly, and do the mitzvahs like a servant does the mitzvah. So to do so, you need to preface the performance of the mitzvahs with acceptance of the yoke of heaven. But accepting the yoke of heaven, Kabbalah's oil, is not a separate theme. It's to lead you to do the mitzvahs appropriately. Daven, learn, give tzedakah, and so on. But on Rosh Hashanah, we accept the yoke of heaven upon ourselves. That is an end in itself. The purpose and goal of Rosh Hashanah is the acceptance of Hashem as King. My devotion and my acceptance and my complete subservience to the King, that is the point of Rosh Hashanah. And then, once we have the word tiku, which tiku exemplifies this idea, so then it says b'chodesh. What is the idea of b'chodesh? Hu inyan ha'is, like the Baal Shem Tov said, it's the idea of the newness and renewal. Shetzarech li is ba'avodas kol l'shana l'gab ha'shan ma'koidmis. That koidmis, that has to be in the avoid of every year in comparison to the years preceded it, that we need to have a new. Our avodah this year has to be new in comparison to the previous year. The shofar hu inyan ha'tainug, shofar has to do with the idea of delight and pleasure and enjoyment. Shofar meloshen shvar v'tainug. Shvar in Aramaic means beauty. Beauty has to do with delight. So through all of this, through the Kabbalah soil, through the renewal, through the delight, by the avodah zum mamshichim u'mailas in the bekesa behelam, we draw down from above the idea first of bekesa, the concealment of the level of the joy, and afterwards the idea of the revealed joy of Sukkot. So, as we mentioned before, this Maimer was said on Chaf Hei El. Chaf Hei El, as we know, is the actual first day of the creation of the world. Rosh Hashanah, which is the sixth day of creation, it marks the creation of mankind. V'zehu, last paragraph on the page, V'zehu gamash nikva Rosh Hashanah be'echad b'tishrei shabai nivra olam. U'yom shisha l'maisa bereishis. This is the reason why Rosh Hashanah was established on the first of Tishrei, that the world was created, and that's the sixth day of the creation. V'loi b'chafei be'el shabai nivra olam. And not on the 25th of El, which is the actual first day of creation. How come? Why didn't we establish Rosh Hashanah on the actual birthday of the world, on the 25th of El? Because the establishment of the Rosh Hashanah Yom Tov is not a celebration and marking the fact that the world was created from nothing. If that was the purpose of Rosh Hashanah, if the purpose of Rosh Hashanah was to celebrate and mark and establish a Yom Tov for the date when the world was created out of nothingness, so then it should have been established 6 days earlier. So then the 25th of El should have been Rosh Hashanah. But that's not what Rosh Hashanah is about. Ella, rather, what was Rosh Hashanah established for? What is the Yom Tov Rosh Hashanah marking and celebrating? Ella la pnimius v'atachlis shel brias ha'olam. Rosh Hashanah is celebrating and marking and was established for the inner aspect and the goal and the purpose of the creation of the world. That is applicable specifically on the day that Adam was created, because that was the purpose of the world. So, therefore also the establishment of Rosh Hashanah is not for the creation of the body of the person. The body of Adam Arishon was earth from the ground, and that was already made and ready, that was already prepared on the first day of creation. Ella abrias nafshe, but rather we are celebrating and marking when his soul was created, when his soul entered his body. Like it says, that he blew into his nostrils a soul of life. That the neshama of Adam Arishon is the innermost level and the goal of the creation of the world. So that's why it was established on Rosh Hashanah, because man is the purpose of the world. And that's what we're marking on Rosh Hashanah, the creation of man. This idea of Rosh Hashanah, which is made up of three parts: Tiku, Kabbalah, Soil. B'chodesh, it has to be a new avodah. Shofar has to be with the light. All these three things, Kabbalah, oil, and newness, and the light, has to be drawn down into the avodah, fulfilling Torah mitzvahs. First and foremost, it begins right away with the mitzvah. That's the mitzvah of the day of Rosh Hashanah. Hachel ma mitzvah de Rosh Hashanah kipshuta, beginning from the mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah in the simple sense, the mitzvah sayoim b'shofar, because the mitzvah of the day is a shofar. So that mitzvah of shofar has to be permeated with the tikkun and chodesh and shofar, the kabbalas oil, the newness, and the light. And another aspect of the shofar is what shofar hints at. Also the tshuva that's hinted in it has to have the tikku and the chodesh and the shofar. Where do we say that tshuva is hinted in it? So he says, like the Rambam wrote, though the blowing of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah is a decree of the pasuk. If you look inside the Chumash, if you look anywhere in Tanakh, it doesn't say blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah because something. It doesn't say that anywhere. Comes to, let's say, Pesach, it says you eat matzah, you eat maror, different things, because you went out of Mitzrayim. You keep Shabbos because Hashem rested on the seventh day, and also because of Yetzias Mitzrayim. It doesn't say you blow shofar because of tshuva. Still in all, the Rambam says, even though the Torah just says it as a decree without explaining why, still in all, the Rambam says, he's still quoting from the Rambam, Remez yesh boy, there's still a hint in the shofar of Rosh Hashanah. Kalaymar, this means to tell you, Uri Yeshenim Mishinaskim, awaken those that are asleep from your sleep, and Nirdamim, Hakitzu Metadim Maschem, and those that are in a deeper sleep, in a slumber, should awaken from your slumber. V'zichru barachem, and you should remember your Creator, Elu Ashoichim Asa'emes Bahavli Azman, those that forget on the truth, in the vanities and the narishkeit and the silliness of time. So he says, the noise civilization Rambam leaning Malchis Achroins v'Shoifres Kimavur become Mekaymis. In addition to the fact that the Rambam, by using this whole lengthy description about awakening and remembering and your Creator, all these things actually hint at the three things that we have, the three different brachas that we do in Musaf on Rosh Hashanah, which is Malchis, kingship, Zechroinus, remembrances, and Shofres. But in addition to that, The simple meaning, what is the Rambam trying to say? The simple meaning is he's trying to teach us about the concept of tshuva. Now, the Rambam, of course, is not just meant to be learned on the simple level, but the Rebbe always finds secrets of the Torah in the words of the Rambam as well. And by using all these excessive language of waking up from sleep, the Rebbe is deriving, he's not just talking about the sleep and the slumber of human beings down here, being asleep in, as the expression goes, being asleep at the wheel, being asleep and slumbering about because they're involved in physical things, but there's a spiritual level of sleep that takes place before Rosh Hashanah. Shloimer could say the Mashukosov and Ardamim Hakitzum with the Maschem, that where it says those that are slumbering should awaken from your slumber. Meram is Bezel Inyan Hadurmita de Lifnei Rosh Hashanah. It hints to the idea of Zeir Ampin, being asleep before Rosh Hashanah. If you remember, we said before that on Rosh Hashanah a totally new chayis, a totally new vitality comes down, which means that the chayis and vitality that was there before Rosh Hashanah left. Similar to what happens that when a person's asleep, his neshama goes up above. The same thing. Instead of malchus, which gives us our chayis, getting its life force and vitality from Zeir Anpin, from the Midas, Zeir Anpin is asleep. It went up. And then, that was on the eve of Rosh Hashanah. That's on Rosh Hashanah night or Rosh Hashanah afternoon. And then afterwards, the Achar Kach Yisayris, once there has been the level of Durmita Dezah, the sleep of that level above of Zeir Anpin, then there's the awakening that the Rambam talks about, Uru Vakitzu, awaken, and wake yourselves up. The Binyan HaMalchus, the idea of the Malchus being rebuilt and revitalized and re-energized with a totally new vitality for the year Tov Shin Pei Hey 5785, which it lost last year's by the sleep of Rosh Hashanah evening, Rosh Hashanah afternoon. But it's not just a spiritual thing in the spiritual realms. This has impact down here. From this comes down also into the physical world as well. Like the Rambam continues in the vanities of time. Pirush, this means to say, also while being down here in our world, that one of the definitions of the world is it's under the limitations of time. It was formed by the breath and the mouth of Hashem. Skip the parentheses. Until there could be the foolishness and the vanities of time in its literal sense. Like it says, it says, let us make man in the plural. And it allows people to make a mistake and think that Hashem needed help in making man and creation. So that's foolishness, that's the vanities of our world. Despite the fact that the world is filled with this foolishness and narishkeit and havolim, still in all gam boil mazet, yes, tshuva, also in this world will be an awakening of tshuva. Until they will make, the Yidden will make from the physicality of the world. Skip the parentheses, Dirlo is Baruch, a home for the Eibishter down here below. So now he's going to bring this back to what we were talking about in the Pasuk of the Haftorah at the beginning of the Maimer. The Zeh, last paragraph on the page, Sois Osis Goimer, that I will make rejoice. What is the level that makes rejoice? Who is making Havaya rejoice? Beforehand we said it's the Navi speaking on behalf of Klal Yisrael. In the spiritual realms, we know Yud-Ke, Vav-Ke goes on the spheres above, so it has to be something higher than the spheres that's bringing joy down to them. That's Bechinas Atik. It's the level of the inner level of Keser on top of Atzilus, brings joy to the spheres of Atzilus. K'd'isu b'zoyar, sois osis b'Hashem ba'atik yomin itmar. that the Zohar says, who is making Hashem rejoice? It's speaking about the level of Atik Yomin. After the sleep of Zeir Ampin, and after the Zeir Ampin is awakened and a whole new vitality comes down, comes the union of the Midos and Malchus now, because we said before, now the Midas can come down and vitalize Malchus. The Yichud Zun, why the Ha'orim b'chinas Atik b'chinas Atayneganal, and the union of Zoh and Nukva comes about through the ray from the level of Atik, and Atik is the spiritual level of the light. We said before that the light is the highest power by a person, and so too by Hashem, the light is the highest level. What level is that? It's a level of Atik. So the light causes the union of Zoh Nukva, which is the reason for the life and vitality of the new year to come down. From this, the light that comes down in the level of Yud Kei Vav Kei, in the level of Zeir Ampin and Malchus, comes on afterwards in the actions of mitzvahs. Like we said before, that Tiku B'Chodesh Shofar, the Kabbalas oil, the newness, the delight, needs to impact the mitzvahs, starting from the mitzvah of Shofar and Rosh Hashanah, continuing with the mitzvah of Tshuva and Rosh Hashanah, until it goes to mitzvahs in general. That's what it says in the Pasuk afterwards, Ki Hil Bishani Bigdei Yesham, that he enclothed me with garments of salvation. Begodim heim mitzvahs, k'mevur betanya sham mitzvahs in b'chinas makifim. We know garments is the level of mitzvahs. Like Tanya explains that the mitzvahs encompass a person. Torah is likened to food because it's ingested into the person's mind, so to speak. Mitzvahs are external to the person; they surround the person. V'yesha hein shin ayin nehoiden da'atik yomin. Yesha, the root is from the word shah, from the word turning. And that has to do with a level of Atik. There's 370 lights in the level of Atik, whatever that is. Umashakos of Yesha Biyud, it doesn't say that he will clothe me with Bigdei Shah. He says Yesha. What's the Yesha, the Yud? Mashkos of Yesha Biyud, who ki Yud Moed ala Asid, because the Yud is something that's used in future tense. When you put a yud prefix in the Hebrew word, it shows on future. Because these 370 lights of Atik will become revealed in Mashiach's times. But that doesn't mean we have no connection with it now. Mikol Makom, still in all the Rebbe says, all the revelations of the future times depend on our actions and service throughout the duration of exile. Also, Hashem's midos, Hashem's attributes is measure for measure. There must be that something similar to this is to be found also in our avodah now, not only when Mashiach comes. From doing in Torah mitzvahs now. So that will bring a literal salvation. Yeshua upidyan lenafshe. First of all, salvation or the redemption for his soul. V'gam pidyan kol hanitzotze shel kedusha min hashev v'chivya, also redeeming all the sparks of holiness from captivity. As we know that in the Shviras HaKelim, all the sparks fell down and they are captives in the physical items in this world. The kaspam was ahavam itam, and there's silver and gold with them. So we know kaspam b'chinas ava, the level of silver. Our money has to do with love, because kaspam is from the word kisofin, from the word desire, and also it has to do with the chachma. It has to do with the sphere of chachma as well as the level of kesef, which is kav hayemin, which is the right line. Chachma and chesed are both in the right line in the spheres, which has to do with Ramach Mitzvah, has to do with the 248 positive commandments. Since they are proactive, they have to do with the right line of Kedusha. V'zahavam, V'chinas Gevura, Ubina, their gold has to do with the level of awe, and has to do with severity, has to do with Bina. Kava Smoil, the left line in Kedusha, which the left line has to do, Shasam Mitzvah, the 365 negative commandments. So that is the big day Yesha, that it causes a Yeshua through all of these things. The pasuk continues, because of the pasuk continues, M'il tzedakah yateni, a robe or cloak of tzedakah he will wrap me in. Hainu the inyan zeh nimshach lamata. That this, all of this that we're talking about, comes really down here below, not just my Torah mitzvahs. Tzedakah is also a garment, just like all other mitzvahs are a garment. But the power of tzedakah is a greater power than all the other mitzvahs. The tzedakah is greater because it brings the geula closer. And tzedakah is from those things that one has benefit from them, eats their fruit in this world, even though the principal reward for tzedakah is reserved for the world to come. What does that indicate? That tzedakah is different than all other mitzvahs because it impacts this world. It has a drawing down and revelation in this world more than any other mitzvahs have. That's why it's called a cloak. That by the Kohen Gadol, about his me'il, it says that it was hanging the bells with the knockers inside the bells. Just the opposite. The rimoin is the outer part of bell, and zagim is like the knockers. Lashmiya koil, because the purpose of those bells that were hanging on the bottom of the Kohen Gadol's coat and cloak was that it should be making a sound, like it says, so that when he comes into the holy, his sound is heard. And a sound indicates something that's being drawn down and revealed. Just like when a person gives voice and makes a sound, he is revealing himself to others. So tzedakah is about the revelation down here. By days through the idea of tzedakah, we make a home for the Eibusha down here below. Is similar to what it was at the beginning of creation. Then the primary shechina was down here below. Especially after the creation of Adam Arishon, that he affected in the entire world. The idea that come, let's bow down and kneel before Hashem, our Maker. So therefore, we see that he was also about bringing down into the world because he called to the entire creation. He addressed all living beings and he told them, let us all kneel before Hashem. In other words, he was making Hashem comfortable and at home here. The neshama of Adam Arishon contained in his neshama all the neshamas of Yidden. The Yisrael, Hainu Yankiv, Yisrael is the same level of Yankiv, V'shufri de Yankiv and Shufri de Adam. It says in Chazal that the image and visage of Yaakov was similar to the image of Adam Arishon. In other words, Yaakov Avinu Yisrael is the whole Klal Yisrael. That's the idea of Adam Arishon. So just like Adam Arishon affects the entire world to make it a home for Hashem, so do the Yidden do that. That's why it says it should blow in the month Shofar, when it's concealed, for the day of our Yom Tov. The simple meaning is it's a law for Yisrael and it's a rule for the God of Yankov. Blowing shofar is making a sound, but how are we making a sound? Not through the power of speech, which is the ordinary way how in Yiddishkeit we are making sounds by davening and learning using our speech, but rather we're doing it in a different way. We are using an action. We are blowing a shofar. So in the soul powers of a person, it's the lowest soul power. It's action. What tool, what instrument are we using to do this action? and the blowing that's being done is with the horn of a behemoth, ubekoil behemoth, and it's like an animal type of sound. It's like that's just a cry. It's gama shofar tolish v'doimim. Also, the actual shofar, even though it's derived from an animal, but it's not being blown while it's connected to the animal. But now it's already an inanimate thing, so it's already the lowest form. In other words, the point that he's trying to say is the blowing of the shofar is with the lowest of the lowest form. It's an action which is the lowest power of a person. It's used with a part of an animal. It's you're bringing out an animal type of sound, not a human type of sound of it, and it's disconnected from the animal, which is it doesn't even have the level of being from the level of living beings. It's an inanimate object. How come? Why is the blowing of the shofar in the lowest of the lowest of the low? Because the primary reason is to make for the Eibusher a home down there low. This is what he continues, that it's a rule, it's a law for the Yidden, it's a rule for the God of Yankov. Chayk Yisrael is also from the expression, give me to eat my appointed, my allotted bread. It's not that it's a law that the God of Yaakov established, but it's a law or a judgment. A mishpat means a court case for how much godliness will come down to the Yidden. So in other words, there's a determination of literally my bread, my lechem chuki, that's the chaykel Yisrael, that the shofar determines what will be with my food, and the shofar also determines the mishpat of the godliness, how much spirituality I will gain from above. That is also something that the blowing of the shofar determines, not just how much bread and physical sustenance I will have. We could explain further also in the explanation of Chayk Yisrael Hu Mishpat Yankov. According to what's explained in the Mamar, that Tzion will be redeemed with justice. The Mishpat Hainu HaTorah. Mishpat is going on Torah. Torah is called Mishpat. When it says that this is a mishpat for God of Yankov, that means the Torah study. Not just ordinary Torah study, in a way of my chukim, meaning to study Torah in such a way that it's going to bring down to the halacha, what is the actual halacha. This means to say the level of action that's in Torah. So again, we find again this idea of the lowest level of Torah, the Torah as it's practical, the Torah as it's down to earth. Until it comes to the ultimate growth of learning that we need, when is Torah called great? The Chazal say the greatness of Torah study is that it brings to action kiyum mitzvahs, fulfillment of mitzvahs. So again, the whole emphasis is that it's about bringing about Torah that has to do with the practical to mitzvahs, which is the most practical. Final page of the Maimer. V'yiratzon should be the will of Hashem. Soon, very speedily, should be fulfilled what it says. He enclosed me with the garments of salvation. The Yesha is in the future tense, as we mentioned earlier. Then there will be a revelation of the inner level of Atik. Explained that the section dealing with Kriyash Mashiach, all the revelations nowadays, before Mashiach comes, is from the external level of Atik Yomim. Pnimius Atik is Gal Los and Lavi. The inner level of Atik Yom will become revealed in the future when Mashiach comes. Mashiach calls, like it says, Kikulam Yedu, I say that all will know me. Who is the me? Atzmusim, Husi is Baruch, Pnimius Atik, Chavyan Oiza Atzmus. Hashem's very essence, the inner level of Atik, where the power of Hashem's essence is concealed. Because of the pasuk continues about all who will know me, it says, from the most minor to the greatest, that this revelation will be to all, in such a way that you are all standing today together, in the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, then we'll fulfill the mitzvah of you should gather all the nation, men, women, and the children, speedily in our days, mamash.